Do you ever feel like you did everything just right, but still ended up burnt out and underpaid? Dr. Annie Cole did too, until she gave herself permission to pivot. In this empowering episode, Annie shares how she went from making 26,000 as a social worker to building $1 million net worth by the age of 35. We dive into the realities of burnout, the power of taking bridge jobs, and how Annie went on to earn her doctorate and land a six-figure leadership role. Whether you're stuck in a job that you've outgrown or just looking for your next financial breakthrough, this conversation offers inspiration to help you move that needle forward. Welcome to the Manifestation and Money Podcast, the show where we tackle the taboo topics of money and manifestation. I'm your host, Jenny Schultz, former 9-to-5 grinder who ditched the status quo and went all in on creating a life I love. Yes, I use manifestation. Yes, I took action. And yes, I created a 7-figure net worth before turning 40. Every week, I'll bring you inspiring stories with money mavens and manifestation masters. From learning how to make more, save more, and grow your wealth to unlocking the power of manifesting your dream life. I am so excited to play in this space with you. Let's jump into creating a life you love. Welcome to the Manifestation and Money Podcast, Dr. Annie.
So good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. I am pumped for you to share with the listeners just who you are and what your story is.
Absolutely. So I'm Dr. Annie Cole, doctor only because I have my doctorate in education. I'll get into that a little bit more later, but I am just your average small town girl, grew up in a really tiny town in Gold Beach, Oregon in the US, and then went off to school thinking I want to become a social worker. I really want to help people. I always thought I'd become a counselor of some kind. So got my bachelor's degree, became a social worker, got that first salary making $26,000. And it was a big reality hit. I learned that it's hard to get far on that salary. And also the work was burning me out. So it was kind of this, I went to school, I did all the things, I got the degree. Now I'm an adult, but I don't know that I want this path. So it was a journey from there to where I am today to figure out what does it mean to change career paths? What does it mean to make more than enough money? What does it mean to save, invest? All the things. So yeah, many different twists and turns since then, but that was really a big pivotal moment for me in my younger life.
I love this origin story because I think we all at some point follow the society rules. You go to school, you get the job, you're just supposed to ride it out till retirement. And for you, you have that pull to help people. And then you
Yeah.
realize that your income isn't matching your desire to help people, right? And now what? You need to be allowed to allow yourself to pivot. So what did that pivot look like for you?
The first pivot, I love sharing this with folks because I didn't know what I wanted. And I think that's where a lot of people end up, whether that's young 20s, right after your degree, or if it's midlife. I took what I like to call a bridge job, where I went and took an office job working as a leasing agent at an apartment complex. And I gave myself a break from that work that was burning me out. And I did a ton of exploration. I met with a therapist to heal from the burnout. I started doing a lot of career exploration online, looking at all the different options. And I ended up pivoting into the education space, going to work at a college, doing research, a bunch of different things in education. But it took me some time to do that exploring and figure out how can I help people in this peer counseling role without doing the counseling piece. So just for anyone who's listening, when you're thinking about pivoting, think about the pieces of the work that still light you up. It might be the setting that's hard. It might be the field. Maybe it's the direct one-on-one client work versus the back-end data administration. So there's lots of pieces I was able to pull out and pivot that into an education type role. And that was just a really good pivot for me.
Definitely. And that's an important thing you touched on there. Keep those pieces that are working for you, those pieces and those elements that you do like or even love, and make sure to pay attention to those pieces that didn't work for you. Because so many people will just hop into that next job and it's not even a bridge job. They're like, okay, this is my new path. Yet you're
Yeah.
signing up for the same thing. If you didn't like getting up at 5 a.m. for the last job, don't be signing up to get up at 5 a.m. for the new job if that was one of your
Yes.
crunch points, right? So that's very
Yeah.
valid there. Then what did you do?
Yeah. So from there, went into education. And one of the great things about working at a college is that they will also pay for a lot of your tuition if you're an employee. I was able to get almost all of my master's degree and my doctorate degree covered. I studied education, did my master's in higher education, became an academic advisor at one point, was working with students, learned almost everything I could about students in higher ed, specifically student development, where psychology meets education, career exploration, how we can help students who are maybe off track or potentially going to withdraw from school. I got to study that. And then as I got higher into my doctorate, I really fell in love with the research side of things. That was, the number crunching. How do we use data to make informed decisions? Ended up graduating and got my first job as a research analyst and worked for this nonprofit ed tech company and was there for the last 5 years. I really got to fall in love with education, but then use data as the method to help people. I went from helping people directly to helping people through data.
Gotcha. And in turn from making this pivot, are you seeing your income increase along the way?
Yeah, and it wasn't immediate. So going back to school, education is also not a high paying field. So there was quite a bit of time where I was making like in the $30,000 to $40,000 range working at the college. And then once I was able to move out of the college and get into my job as a research analyst, I was able to make quite a bit more. But a big part of my story and what I like to share with people is that it didn't happen without intention. There were oftentimes I was in positions where I would go and ask during my annual review for a title change or for a raise. And sometimes I was told no, and I decided it might be time to change to a different organization or push back on a decision. So it took a lot of personal advocacy and a lot of, honestly, uncomfortable conversations to make that happen. For women, especially, I think it's important to understand that you have to be your own advocate, and it's okay to be uncomfortable with those conversations. They're not always going to be successful, but just by doing that alone, you raise your confidence, you raise your belief in yourself, and you will likely at some point get some benefits from it in a financial form.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because if a current employer says no, you're not really in any different position. But if anything, you might have
Yeah.
planted the seed in your employer's mind of, oh, this person is looking to either switch into a different role or looking for a bigger pay raise. Is there different tasks we can assign them to elevate their paycheck? And if they say yes in that moment, I think a bunch of no's is worth finally getting that yes for, okay, sweet. Now I've leveled up this level of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I ever asked for the first time, I thought a no would be the end of the world and it would be the worst thing. The worst case is that you might feel uncomfortable. But most of the time, think about your long-term vision. If your long-term vision is to ultimately move up into a different position and you don't know where you stand and you don't know that the company is going to say no, you also haven't learned yet that that might not be the right spot for you. So I just think of it as information rather than judging it. No's are hard to take, but they're also information that help you make a next decision.
Definitely. And if we could just like segue here for a second, because if you are a girl who does do that, what is a tip you have for somebody who's listening to this and is like, oh, I couldn't even fathom going out and having that uncomfortable conversation? What is a mindset shift or something you can share to allow the person to, oh, step into possibility there?
It's hard. It's definitely a mental shift before anything because you have to make yourself feel ready and then go have the conversation. There's a couple things you can do. First, in my book, I have a full script on how you can prepare for and do the ask for a raise or a title change. You can always go to the book for the full script, but if you're uncomfortable with an ask for a raise or a title change, you can start with something smaller and work your way up. If you know you have one-on-one meetings with your boss every so often, you can say to your boss, hey, during our next meeting, I want to discuss my job and responsibilities in general. And maybe ask your boss, over the long run, I'd really love to increase my responsibility and just grow in my career, potentially into a higher level position, more responsibility, et cetera. What are some ways I might be able to do that in the next 3 to 6 months? And start with that conversation because that might allow your boss to sense that you want to level up without it being really intimidating or potentially your boss thinking, well, now they want to move right away. They want more money. So test the waters in that way. That's a little bit more of a comfortable conversation.
Yeah. And again, planting that seed there. You're not blindsiding your boss in the meeting being like, hey, pay me more, right? You're having the
Yes.
conversation being like, what are the opportunities that could lead me to being paid more? I really like that.
Absolutely.
Okay, fun.
And I would just say as another little nugget for folks, some companies do have really strict HR policies around what they can pay people. And they may have strict bans so that they can't, maybe some other company out there is paying $70,000 for your role, but your company only has a $40,000 to $60,000 range. just know that it's not just your boss, it's also HR policies and internal regulations. So if that's the case, then it's a question of, do I want to stay at this company or do I want to move elsewhere? So there's just a lot of pieces that go into the decision on whether or not you can make more money.
Okay, neat. So
Yes.
digging back into a bit more of your story here. So then you've done the research part of it. So where does the money piece come in for you? Because I know when I was reading your bio, you're like, at some point pivot and start teaching people everything that you had learned about money along the way. So where does the money
Yeah.
start part of your story start to weave in here?
Yeah, so I think for me, I went from being this low income earner, struggling the social work position, and there was a lot of the pieces of advocacy that I learned. And then as I learned how to advocate for myself and I moved into this research analyst role, I was quickly promoted. I became a director and then a vice president of research. I found myself in this executive level role, lots of responsibility, and suddenly making six figures and realizing that once I had all this money, I had really never been taught what to do with that money. So it was a lot of self-education, meeting with advisors. My husband and I, we bought our first home. I did a lot of stock market investing. We bought some real estate properties. So there was just lots of different pieces that were starting to happen. And then before I knew it, when I reached 35, I had a net worth of $1 million and realized this all happened because of all of these little pieces that I had learned along the way. If I hadn't learned all those things, I could have made a lot of money and potentially just spent it all and had this lifestyle creep. Could have done a lot of different things, but instead learned how to leverage it into investing, saving, making good decisions, and realized this is what I want to teach women how to do because it's one thing to make good money, and that's a big piece of it. But then what do you do once you make that good money? How do you build wealth and how do you build a sustainable financial resource for yourself? That's so important.
Yeah, you saying that is just making me think of I have a nephew who's currently graduating in a month from just from high school, but he's still living at home. He doesn't really know what he wants to do post-secondary. He's got a job, so he's making money. And my sister's trying to convince him, you're living at home rent free right now. Have a teeny portion that you're allowing yourself to have for like fun money and learn
Yeah.
what to do with the bulk of your money. She's like, there's never going to be another opportunity in your life. Like, sure, your income level will be more, but where you can specifically be putting a chunk of your money into action for you for the future, into action for you actually like little independent people going out there and making you more money at such a young age, right?
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
are some like first steps you tell people to do, whether it's the new person like that or the person like you who's all of a sudden making six figures? Where does somebody
Yeah.
start? They've got the money. It's so easy just to start spending it.
It is. And I think the number one thing is having a vision for your life and for your money because I think we all were probably told at one point in school, investing is so great. And we saw that chart. If you invest young, it's going to grow really fast and, compound interest. And so we all saw that, but that doesn't mean on a daily basis we're going to act on it because that takes deferred gratification to put away $20 instead of going and spending $20 on Uber Eats. It starts with the mindset of having a vision of what your investments will do for you. Because if you can see, oh, I want to retire 20 years early, or oh, if I were able to set aside this amount, I could have $1 million in 30 years. Or by doing this, I'm doubling my money and that's enough for me. So, whatever it is that's your motivator, I think people really need to find that first. And that's what will sustain the investment practices. And then when it comes to basic investing, if you can through your employer, definitely take advantage of their retirement options because a lot of times it comes with a match and that's just free money that you're going to be able to get. But beyond that, understand the difference between the basic accounts. So you have retirement and a Roth account. You also have different amounts you can put aside every month. So use an online calculator to just see, hey, if I put aside $100 a month, I'd get to this by retirement. 150, I'd get to this. Do some of those calculations yourself and it will start to become more real. And I think that also creates that cycle of you have the excitement, it becomes real, it spurs more excitement, and then you just make it a habit from there.
Yeah, making it a habit. I think that's key. Being able to
Mm-hmm.
make it a habit because like you said, Uber Eats, like there's so many things in this day and age that we can literally poke a button, poof, the money's
Yes.
gone. We've got that instant gratification. And
Yes.
it's not as easy to say, oh, hey, I'm going to go invest X amount of dollars per paycheck, right? That is not as automatic or as easy as it is to order Uber Eats.
Yeah, it's so easy to spend. It's really hard to save. And also, if you don't understand investing, if you don't know that if you put $10 in, if you have an investing app and you put $10 in, you may not make any money tomorrow. You may not make any money this year. You might actually lose money. Investing is all about long-term gains. So I think a lot of people, if you're not educated on that process, you also won't see any gains in certain weeks, months, years. And that's even more sad and potentially going to demotivate you. So you really have to understand, again, your vision, what you're doing, work with someone who is an investment professional who can give you some advice so that you know what you're working towards and the day-to-day doesn't really freak you out.
Yeah. And this is part of your wealth framework, right? Let's dig into that. What does that look like?
So it's the framework I use with one-on-one clients. It's also the framework that's laid out in my book. So it's 5 steps to wealth. The first being vision and mindset. So a lot of the things I've already talked about, overcoming any limiting beliefs you have and creating a really strong vision and that why for your life. And then number 2 is crunching the numbers. So basically taking your vision, turning it into a budget and saying, well, that dream life of mine would actually take this budgeting style, this income, these investments. From there, we have to create the income to support that lifestyle. So then we think about income streams and we talk about self-employment, employment, all kinds of things in there. Then from there, we talk about investments. So growing your money and building assets. And then finally, we get into phase 5, which is more lifestyle. How do we create those habits so that all of this is sustainable? So I think what's different is that a lot of people either only focus on number 3, which is get a job and make money, or they really focus on number 2, create a budget and just restrict yourself. But if you start with that vision and then you create, vision into numbers, numbers into an income dream, an income vision, that's different than just going and getting a job just to make money, just to spend it all to live in the rat race. So it's kind of flipping the whole thing on its head.
Yeah, I love that because this being a show about manifestation and money, intention is such a huge piece of manifestation and what you're creating. So your intention
Yes.
of what your end goal is that thing that's propelling you through all the day-to-day decisions. It's allowing you to say yes to the things that align with that big vision and no to the things that are pulling you away from it. But let's talk about side hustles for a little bit here, because I think
Yeah.
side hustles in this economy, especially where the people might be in the 9 to 5, they're working towards getting those raises or it doesn't quite feel fulfilling. I think there's a big side gig economy out there to be able to start up a side hustle that oftentimes people overthink. They
Yeah.
they overcomplicate having a side hustle and making money outside of your 9 to 5. Not everybody's cut out to be an entrepreneur. Like you said, you kind of have to assess all those things, but a side hustle is like a gateway into, can I do this? I still have my safe, secure 9 to 5. In this type of economy, what do you see as people having as lucrative side hustles?
That's a great question. I'm actually running a workshop this week on this very topic about side hustles because I think just to give some framing around this, if you're thinking about starting a side hustle, the first thing you should do is not jump into anything, just like we talked about with the next job. If you want to make a job change, do that reflection. With a side hustle, do a couple pieces of reflection first. So, number 1, how much money do you actually want to make? Is this, I don't really care if I made $100 a month, it would be great. Or I'm intentionally trying to make $2,000 a month here. I want to be a little more thoughtful. Those are very different approaches. So, think about the money. And then think about your time and skill. Do you want to do something on top of your 9 to 5 in the evenings? Do you want to do something in the evening? Do you want to do something in person, virtual? What kind of skill would you maybe want to apply? Do you want to do graphic design? Do you want to go work in person at a bookstore? I mean, there's a million different things you could do. Once you think about those pieces all together, you can start to frame out, I want to make this much money and potentially these skill, potentially these ways. And then you can start going out and trying to put in the action because it's very different to say, I want to have a side hustle where I take on some extra work, like a part-time job or another sort of freelance role that's already open versus I'm going to create my own business. I'm going to try to start something from scratch that has a bigger learning curve in the beginning. It's just very different. So I would just encourage people to think through all those first pieces. And then from there, that's where you can start crafting a really intentional side hustle. Because in this economy, there's so many things you could do online, but there's also open opportunities back to Uber Eats. You could just truly be an Uber Eats driver, or you could say, I want to start my own coaching community and start that from scratch. that's going to be a lot more upfront work, but potentially be a very different long-term income stream versus Uber Eats is very transactional. You're just going to go work and make that money.
That's exciting that you do workshops based around that, because so
Yeah.
many people like just to be able to attend a free workshop like that, to have that spark ignited in them, or be like, I didn't think about it this way. And to do that prelim homework is a very valid point,
Yeah.
because you don't want to invest a lot of money or time and then
Mhm.
all for nothing, right? So to be able to do a bit of that homework ahead of time. And do you run these workshops all the time, or is this just kind of a one-off?
Yeah, actually I do. So for my company's Money Essentials, so it's money-essentials.com. And if you just go to the website or go to /events, we run events all the time. So I run quite a few myself. They're always around financial topics. So either personal finance, career, or business, but centered around how to make money. We have some really cool, so every single month I have experts come in and speak, and then I run some of them. So we have, tax experts. We had someone recently talk all about how to do Pinterest marketing for your business. We have the side hustle one coming up. So yeah, we always have events. They're always free. They're virtual. They're an hour long. They're during the week. And it's just ways for women to learn different tips about how to make money.
I will be sure to have that linked in the show notes so that people who are
So,
intrigued by that can click through and check you
yeah.
out. So yeah, so you've got a book. Let's just talk about your book for a little bit here, because we've touched on various elements that are in your book. So what is your book called? What is it about?
Yeah, the book is called 101 Ways to Build Wealth. So it follows the same 5-step wealth framework. So it's 5 different chapters of very, very short 2 to 3 page tips. In the first section, it talks about that vision and mindset, things like psychology research on how to overcome money shame or how to actually create a financial vision for your life. So really great tips in that section. The budgeting section is all about how to crunch those numbers, tips on savings, interest rates, loan, high yield savings accounts, and then creating income. There's so many suggestions in there about side hustles. We have the salary negotiation, everything about having an actual career and career growth, investing, all about real estate investing, stock market investing, retirement, taxes. And then in the final section, habits and lifestyle is more about just how to build those habits, but some interesting tips on how to Airbnb your home, how to travel on the cheap, how to use credit card rewards. So there's just truly all kinds of really cool tips in there on how to build wealth and earn money across lots of different aspects.
Fascinating. That sounds like the kind of book that it makes the money back that you spend on buying the book. Like one of
Oh,
those
yes.
tips could change the trajectory of your life, right? So there's 101 tips in
Absolutely.
there. Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I always like to round out the conversation with, I would love to hear for you to share just kind of your biggest piece of advice for somebody who wants to go out and create a life they love.
I think the biggest thing is don't stop believing in yourself because you just have no idea what you're capable of. And I think that's what's so fun about this podcast and manifestation. It starts with the tiniest of beliefs. It doesn't have to be a full, I know what I'm going to do yet. It could just be this curiosity, even of, I'm curious to see what's possible. So don't give up on that. Don't give up hope. There's just so many financial strategies, no matter where you're at. I mean, my life's a great example coming from this social work background, was not raised with parents, I didn't inherit any of this wealth. So you really can do a lot from scratch from wherever you're at.
That element of curiosity, that
Yeah.
using that as just like a little fuel to dictate how your life is playing out keeps life fun,
Yeah,
keeps it playful. And
it does.
yeah, it took you from having this vision of going out to helping people in a very different way than you are going out and helping people now today.
Yeah, it's very different. And we all have those through lines. I think that's what's so fun is as you get older, your resume might not be perfect, but you know the through line. So we get to tell our story in whatever way we want.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on the show today and sharing your story. And I would love for you to share with listeners where they can reach out and connect with you.
Yeah, the best spot's going to be my website. So money-essentials.com. All kinds of goodies on there, lots of free resources. Like I said, we have events. We also have blog content, lots of free guides there. My book is available there. And then all my socials are also linked there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Dr. Annie.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Manifestation and Money podcast. If today's conversation lit a spark in you and you're craving a space to go deeper with your vision, to actually live what you are manifesting, I want to invite you into something really special. It's called the Manifestation Playground, a high-vibe monthly membership where you get to experiment with manifestation techniques, connect in intimate pods of like-minded people, and receive direct mentorship from me twice a month inside our cozy Zoom room. This is where your dream life stops living in your journal and starts showing up in your reality. Vision, energy, accountability, it's all happening inside the Manifestation Playground, and your group might be forming right now. Just head to www.manifestationplayground.ca or click on the link in the show notes to learn more and save your seat. And remember, your vision isn't random. It is your future waiting for you to believe in it. I'll see you next time, or inside the playground.